line for a session at Dreamforce with a friend of mine. We were just chatting, waiting for the room to open up. And she made a comment to me that was something along the lines of, every time I need to know who's the expert in a certain part of Salesforce, or who the product manager is, or who knows a lot about any particular topic, she said, for some reason, I always come to you. And if she says, if you don't know who it is, you know somebody that knows the answer to that question. And she said, it's like you're Kevin Bacon. You're less than 6 degrees away from everybody in the Salesforce ecosystem. And it just sort of stuck with me. The bacon thing is a whole nother theme around my personal brand. I've been running a breakfast at Dreamforce geared towards the first-time attendees of Dreamforce since 2012. And the very first year I organized that breakfast, I wanted to password protect the site for people to purchase their tickets, so I knew only Dreamforce attendees were actually going to be there. So I used the letters DF for Dreamforce, 12 for the year, and the word bacon as the password. So DF12 bacon. Last year was DF19 bacon. Now, actually, this year's was DF20 bacon because I did a virtual one for Dreamforce this year as well. But through those efforts, the breakfast, along with a few other things, I've managed to raise over $34,000 to support Project Night Night. And Project Night Night is a nonprofit organization that helps provide a sense of security to homeless kids through a book, a blanket, a stuffed animal, and a tote bag, so that those kids have something to carry around with them no matter where they call home. They always have something that they can call their own. And I've been supporting them since 2013. So there's a little bit of history about me. So today we're going to briefly cover my own Salesforce journey, my winding path, as I call it, on the next slide. Then we'll talk about the job market, the Salesforce job market in particular. And then we'll discuss what resumes are, what they should look like, what their purpose is, and then how to do a job search. And then we'll cover some tips on how to ace the job interview. And then finally, we'll go through what things you should think about when you're trying to make a decision whether to accept a job offer or not, or if you're in the extremely fortunate position of having multiple offers on the table, how you go about deciding between the multiple offers. And then I always end these presentations with just a little remember where you came from, which is really nothing more than giving back to the community and helping others with their journey or anything like that. So with that said, let's move on into my little winding journey. Way back in the dark ages, I went to college in Cincinnati. And as soon as I graduated college, I started working for the university. And I spent 10 years in the university system in Ohio, working for the University of Cincinnati. And then I took a role at Miami University, just up the road from Cincinnati in Oxford, Ohio. This way before Salesforce is when all this stuff took place. I worked for an airline for a number of years. I worked at Walmart in their corporate headquarters for a few years as a financial analyst in one of their merchandising departments. And then I ended up working for a internet service provider here locally in Evansville, Indiana. And that's where trouble started, I suppose you could say. You see the little green dots that connect all those stops in my winding path. And right after where you see MetroNet, the dots kind of fall off the page and get really dark. I made the mistake. I'll call it a mistake right now. I don't necessarily still think it's a mistake. I spoke up during a meeting, let's put it that way, and basically told the president of the company that he had unrealistic expectations and something that he wanted me to complete in 3 weeks, I told him was going to take 3 months. I spent the first 6 months or so of my job at that company doing exactly that thing that I presented to him in this meeting, preparing it and getting it all ready to be presented and to get things to the point where I thought it was ready. And then he came back and said, no, Eric, that's not how you should have done it. I want you to do it this way. And can you have it redone in 3 weeks? And that's when I said, well, John, this has taken me 6 months. I can understand why you want it done your way, but it's going to take me 3 months for me to feel comfortable about doing it your way and making sure everything's right. And so he didn't like that. He kind of said, well, let me ask you another question then, Eric. How much time do you sleep every night? When I thought, well, that's kind of a personal question, but he's the president of the company. I'd humor him and give him an answer. So I said, John, I'm a 5 to 6 hours of sleep kind of person. I don't need a whole lot of sleep every night. And he said, great, then you've got 18 hours a day, 7 days a week that you can spend on this project, and you'll be done in 3 weeks. Well, I sort of reacted then and said the first thing that came to my mind, which was, I'm sorry, John, I have a family I enjoy spending time with, and you don't pay me enough money to work those kinds of hours. Well, that was my demise. 6 weeks later, I was out of a job. The following Monday after that meeting on a Friday, I got called into my boss's office, and my boss said, John didn't like that, so you're gone. You have 6 weeks to find a new job. We're keeping you on for 6 weeks because we've hired your replacement and they start in a week. So yeah, so that was fun, right? Spending the last 6 weeks of my job training someone to do the job that I've been doing, and knowing my job was going to end. And it was all because I basically made the president of the company mad, and he just didn't know how to react. So he said, I want Eric out of here. So, okay, whatever, it's fine. I got over it. But it led to 2.5 years of me not having a full-time position, of me working contract jobs when I could find them that made pretty decent money, and working whatever jobs I could just to make ends meet and to put food on the table. My primary role at that point in time in my career was unloading trucks at a department store third shift. So I was the guy in the truck pushing all the boxes down the conveyor belt to all the young high school kids at the other end of the line who were pulling the boxes off and stocking the store during those overnight hours. Needless to say, it was a little rougher than I wanted it to be. Sometimes I was working 3 or 4 different jobs at a time, and I was gone 20 hours a day between jobs. And that was tough. My family life was non-existent. All I did was go home and sleep, it seemed like. But we made it through it. And I stumbled into a role at the end of that with Mitchell International, which is a software company. It was originally a temporary job with them as a contact center agent. So I'd be handling tech support for their own clients. And that was supposed to just be an 8-week job. And I thought, well, 8 weeks at good money is better than 8 weeks at not so good money. And I can keep both jobs based on the schedule of the call center role and the other position I was working at the time. So I did it. Those 8 weeks came and went. The call volume in the call center on that one product they hired me and 3 other people to support the rollout of was really light. So the other 3 people at the end of the 8 weeks, they were gone. They kept me on because I was performing really well. So I kept coming to work. I kept asking my boss, do I need to look for a job? 8 weeks is long gone. We're now 3 months, 4 months, 5 months in. And she kept saying, as long as we'll give you notice if you have to go look for a job. And she jokingly said, as long as your security badge lets you in the building, just keep coming to work. So I did. I thought it was great. I mean, I was happy there. It was fun work. It was decent money. And then 6 or 7 months into that job, remember, it was an 8-week assignment from what I was told at the beginning. About 7 months in, the HR department calls me and says, hey, Eric, we've got a full-time position with the company. It's doing exactly what you're doing today. It's a contact center agent position, but it's with the company. You'll be an employee of the company. There's better pay. There's more benefits. Are you interested? And I was like, of course I'm interested. I've been waiting 3 years to find a real job. I'd love to do that. And I said, well, there's an interview process. It's like, okay, well, I interviewed for the job once and I got it, so I can do it again. That was my thinking. So they set me up with a phone call interview with the vice president who was over the call center and business transformation and a whole bunch of other departments in the company. Her job title was probably so long it wouldn't fit on a business card. She was responsible for so much there. And so she and I get on this phone call together. And she says, Eric, I've looked at your scores in the call center and I know why you're still here. It's because you're really good at what you do. And I've looked at the previous work that you've done at the other companies like Walmart and other places. And she says, I really just have one question to ask you. And my skeptical mind went, oh, great, a 1-question job interview. I might as well just walk out the door and go home right now and look for another job. And she says, so Eric, why are we wasting your time and ours having you support our customers when there's so many other things you can do to help move this company forward? I shrugged my shoulders and I said, well, the only job you have available is the call center agent role. And Pauline on the other end of the line, Pauline said, yeah, that's true, but give me 3 weeks. I'm working on approval for a business analyst role to launch Salesforce to the call center you're now working in, and I think you'd be perfect for that job. And my reaction to that was, what's Salesforce? I've never heard of it. And Pauline said, don't worry about it. I think you have the skills you need to understand it, and you'll do fine. Well, 3 weeks later, I was on the job in this business analyst role, rolling out Salesforce to this call center that I used to work in, having no prior experience with Salesforce at all. I barely knew what CRM stood for even at that point in time. And it was amazing. I mean, it was wild. It was tons of challenges, tons of learning opportunities, and a lot of trial and error kinds of things. The other thing that my boss Pauline told me at that point in time when she made the formal offer for me to have that job was, oh, we don't have money to send you to training, so you need to learn as much as you can through searching on the internet or going to user group meetings. This was way before Trailhead existed, so I couldn't just log on to Trailhead and do a module and learn something. So I spent a day or 2 days a month for the first probably 6 or 7 months of that job, driving around to a whole bunch of cities in the Midwest where I live, going to user group meetings. That's what the little map is for on the slide that you're looking at. The red dot close to the center is where I live, and all of those other blue dots scattered around are other cities where there were user group meetings I would attend. And they were anywhere from 2.5 to 5 hours away each way. So obviously I can't do a 10-hour drive and spend 3 or 4 hours in a meeting all in one day, because that's way too much. So I'd spend the night if I was going to Chicago. The others were, for the most part, almost doable on a round trip during the same day. And ultimately what came out of all of that was me saying to myself, there's got to be more Salesforce users in Evansville, Indiana besides me. So let me talk to somebody at Salesforce and see what we can do to have them start a user group here. So I found somebody at Salesforce to talk to, and I posed that question. I said, hey, what's it take to start a user group in my city? And their response was, congratulations, you just volunteered to lead the group. And I was shaking my head no, and I was thinking, I'm the wrong person to lead this group. I know virtually nothing about the platform, nothing about Salesforce. I want to learn. That's why I think there needs to be a group here. Well, through a few more conversations, that woman at Salesforce convinced me that I was probably the right person to lead the group, because I was so curious for knowledge and so hungry to learn. And so I launched the Salesforce user group here in Southern Indiana in May of 2010. I had 5 people attend that first meeting. I've been leading that group ever since, and those same 5 people come to almost every single meeting ever since then, along with anywhere between 15 and 50 other people. And now that we've gone virtual for the last year or so, we get visitors from all around the world, just like we probably have in today's meeting as well. So I quickly dove in headfirst into the Salesforce community and realized the value of what the community had to offer. My first year on the platform there in 2010, I was unable to attend Dreamforce. The company didn't have budget to send me. They told me I could go, I could use company time and attend, but I'd have to pay for the event on my own. And even 10 years ago, a week in San Francisco was pretty expensive, so I couldn't afford to go, so I didn't. But that was what caused me to start Midwest Dreamin' in 2011. I couldn't go to Dreamforce, so I thought, I'm going to bring Dreamforce to me. And that was the whole idea behind this Midwest Dreamin' conference that I launched. From that point forward, I changed jobs, went to a different company, still doing similar work, helped a different company roll out the Service Cloud and the Sales Cloud, did a lot of work in reporting and analytics inside Salesforce. Somewhere in that process, Salesforce named me an MVP. I'm still not entirely sure I understand why. I think most of us MVPs probably would say that we really don't see why Salesforce thought we were anything special. We were just doing something that felt right and just trying to help other people. And then 2014 rolls around. I stumbled into a product by Aptus called XAuthor for Excel and decided I wanted to make a job change. I wanted to go work for this company because their product was amazing. A year and a half later, I started working for them. It took me a year and a half of conversations with Aptus for them to understand what I wanted to do and why I thought there was value, and they created a position for me. life changed while I was there. Things went from good to great to horrible because of all sorts of things that were out of my control. And in 2019, early 2019 or so, I left Aptus and found a role working for IT Equality. I knew the founder of the company before she started the company, and I had helped her on a couple of projects previous while I was still working at Aptus, and just mentioned to her that I was out looking for a job. And they said, well, I can't afford to pay you for full-time hours right now because we're still small and we're growing and don't have enough contracts on the table right now to afford you full-time, but I can pay you for about 100 hours a month. But what she wanted to pay me for those 100 hours a month was about the same as I was making at Aptus for my salary there. And I was working 75, 80 hours a week at that point in time at Aptus. So that was another one of those no-brainer decisions. It's an easy choice to make the same amount of money and work half the hours or less than half even. So I took the role, made a few changes at that company, and we quickly got it to the point where the company was busy enough that they could afford to bring me on full time. Then COVID hit, and like a lot of other people, that caused some problems with their jobs. The companies had things slow down. They had clients cancel projects. And at that point in time, IT Equality and I decided it was better for the company if I just walked away and found something else. I was in a non-billable role, so I wasn't client facing. I was doing marketing and customer success and finance. So I saw how bad things were at the company. When you're a small company that doesn't have any funding other than what you bring in by selling your services, if you're billing $40,000 a month to your clients and your salaries are $50,000 and $60,000 a month, you're not going to last very long. So I said to Ashley, the founder of the company, I said, I'll just leave. I've got 10 years in the ecosystem. I'm confident I'll find something else. Keep the consultants you have on duty, keep them working. They all had 1 or 2 years experience at that company and on Salesforce as a whole, because Ashley always hired people outside of the tech world into those positions to make and train them up into being consultants, which was a great cause. And I wanted to try to help support that. So when I left IT Equality, my job search was not your traditional one. I wouldn't recommend this for people new to the ecosystem, but for somebody that's been around a while, you may want to consider this approach for yourself. I sent emails out to about 20 different people at 18 or 20 different companies that I knew really well, and companies that I really trusted and felt like they knew what they were doing and that they were good members of the ecosystem. And the email simply said, I have no idea whether you have any vacant positions right now, but I thought you should know I'm on the job market and wondered if we should have a conversation. That was it. It was like, hey, I'm looking for a job. What do you got? Should we talk? Nothing more. And most of them came back to me and said, yeah, let's talk. So within 3 weeks, I had 2 job offers. The job that I ended up taking at Active Campaign wasn't any of that. That came out of the blue at the same point in time. The chief marketing officer at Active Campaign sent me a message on LinkedIn and just said, hey, Eric, it's been a while since you and I chatted, since we parted ways at Aptus a few years ago. Here's where I'm at. Here's what we're doing. And here's a role that I'm looking to fill. Do you know somebody who might be interested? At which point I said to Maria, who was the woman who hired me at Aptus, who is the chief marketing officer here at Active Campaign now, I said to Maria, so you're really looking for me. You want somebody like me to take a job like the one I had working for you at Aptus? And she basically said, yeah, that's right. I said, let's talk. So I got a job offer from her really quickly, and then I had 3 job offers to figure out what I wanted to do with. And obviously I took the one at Active Campaign not just because of salaries, because it wasn't the highest salary offer out of the mix, but there were other things that were more important to me. And we'll get into that a little bit later when we're talking about the decision-making process. So there's my quick history, if you will, of my life in the ecosystem and a little before. So let's talk a little bit about the Salesforce job market right now. Where do you go to find jobs? How can you find them? What kind of roles are out there? Even with COVID hitting some companies and some things slowing down, there's still a ton of opportunities in the Salesforce ecosystem. You may have to take a role that's not exactly what you're looking for initially, especially if you're new and you want a Salesforce administrator role. It's hard to get a Salesforce administrator role when you don't have experience as a Salesforce administrator. So someone new to the ecosystem, you may be better off taking a role where you become a Salesforce end user, where you're maybe in sales operations or marketing operations or customer support, those kinds of roles where you're using Salesforce, where then you can help showcase your skills to the company you're in by suggesting things they might want to change in their processes or offer ways to make things better at that company based on what you know around Salesforce and things you think should be implemented there. Um, Obviously, probably most of you on the call are aware of the various types of roles that exist in companies: end users, administrators, developers, business analysts is another title that you'll see sometimes. Sometimes companies have separate business analysts dedicated to that work. Sometimes that becomes the function of the Salesforce administrator. Um, there's jobs with partners. You don't have to go to work for an end user company. I'm now on my third role at a partner company. So it's outnumbered my roles at customer companies now. And if you go out to job sites like Glassdoor or Indeed, and you just simply type in Salesforce administrator and you filter it down to jobs posted within the last week, every time I've done that, there's always been hundreds of jobs posted. Sometimes of course, they're going to want some skills and some experience. So there's the hard part for the people that are new to the ecosystem. You got to figure out a way to crack that shell, if you will, and get a foot in the door and at least get to a conversation. And I've got a few comments on that we'll talk to in just a little bit as well. So you're probably all familiar with a resume. You've probably had to write one, revamp it, present it to many people over the course of your own lifespan and your career up to this point. There's a few basic pieces of information that they really need to have: who you are, how they can get in touch with you, what skills and experience you've had, what your education is like, and what types of work and volunteer experience that you've had up to this point. The layout of that on the page is somewhat irrelevant. There are companies who may look for specific things in certain ways. Generally, I tend to think that at the top of your resume, you should highlight some of your major accomplishments and your goals, the things you want to do, and then you should progress through what you've done on the jobs, and then highlight your education and your other experience, volunteering and things of that nature down at the bottom. In today's world with Salesforce the way it is now, when you're talking about education, I would certainly point out if you have 700 trailhead badges, if you have 6 super badges, if you have 12 certifications, or whatever those numbers may be for you, I'd make sure that that's highlighted on your resume. For those of you that are certified, you have access to that certified logo. I'd put that in a prominent place on your resume, like the top corner, perhaps. If you have multiple certifications, line the top of the page with all the logos for the certifications you have, because that's going to draw attention to them. And that's going to be one thing that proves to that company you've got the knowledge that it takes to do this work. So what's a resume's real purpose? It's to match candidates with an employment opportunity, right? It's to help the companies realize you're the right person for the job, but it's also kind of to help you realize the job's right for you, but you really want the resume to help you stand out in a crowd. You want to do something that's going to make it noticeable and more prominent to the people reviewing it. Recruiters tend to only spend a minute or two looking at a resume. They're keying in on focus, certain keywords perhaps, or like I said a minute ago, the presence of those certifications. And in some cases, resumes go straight into an automated process that utilizes AI, and they look for certain keywords. So you want to make sure you've got the right words on your resume, assuming you have the skills that match those words, of course. And then that'll help you at least get past that initial screening. So how can you stand out? What can you do? What are some things that can help you get to that point? Capitalize on what makes you, you, or the unique traits about you, the things that you're really passionate about. As Shiva mentioned at the beginning as she was introducing me, I'm an equality advocate. I think everyone deserves a fair shake. I think everyone should have the same opportunities, regardless of where you came from, regardless of the color of your skin, or any of those other labels sometimes people put on other people. I talk about that a lot. Make sure that if you're passionate about something like that, it shows. Companies look for things like that. They want to see that you have a deep, strong feeling about something. I would also suggest thinking about specializing in a certain area that's not necessarily one of the stronger areas. And by stronger, I mean that doesn't have a lot of people that already specialize in it. In today's market, CPQ, Field Service Lightning, and Tableau and Analytics were the three I would suggest. There's a ton of Salesforce administrators out there. There's even a lot of developers out there right now. But those three areas I think are kind of the hot areas now where there's not enough talent to keep up with the need. And then the other thing I would suggest is think about creating a personal brand. And that's a whole conversation that we can get into. I'll do a really quick summary on this one. I've done a whole presentation on personal branding before. What's a brand, right? If you think about what a brand is, these are probably three of the most popular brands in the world. Everybody knows Coca-Cola, Aptus, and Salesforce. Sorry, not Aptus, Apple. And the logo, you just look at the logo and you know what the company's all about. You recognize it, you understand that it's a symbol that talks about their products, their services. It identifies them as a unique company and identifies their products and services as unique. Way back when I was in college, I remember doing a case study in an organizational management class about the company Coca-Cola. And most of us decided Coca-Cola wasn't really selling beverages. They were marketing thirst and the ability to quench that thirst. And so when people saw the Coca-Cola logo, they got thirsty. They wanted a drink. So they'd go grab a Coke or a Sprite or some other brand that was a Coca-Cola product. That's the purpose of a brand, is to get people to know what you're all about. From the perspective of a personal brand, it's really similar. You recognize names and you know what they stand for. These are just some of the larger personal brands in the Salesforce ecosystem and the people associated with those brands. Probably out of these, I'd say most of you probably are familiar with David Liu and his SF99 website and his YouTube videos and all those things. Salesforce Ben has a great blog site out there, probably one of the biggest blog sites in the entire Salesforce ecosystem. I think he's around 250, 300,000 followers on his blog right now. Rad Women is another great organization and founded by some Salesforce, former Salesforce employees or MVPs, that their entire focus is teaching women to code. And then Jen Lee is another great Salesforce MVP who's always putting out tons of great information on her blog. So what do you need to do if you want to start a personal brand? There's really 4 key points that I think you need to consider on how to start and how to build a personal brand. You want to make sure you deliver a consistent message and that's the key to gaining trust. You build up a messaging, you're consistent with delivering it. People start to expect that you're going to produce content. For me personally, I used to blog pretty regularly, once a week, once every 2 weeks. And people would start to realize that it's almost time for Eric to put out a blog. Who's he going to introduce to the community this week? Going back to the Kevin Bacon thing. I did a blog series for over 2 years where I simply introduced a member of the Salesforce community to the community. And people started expecting that to happen and wondered who was next. And it was fun. For me, it was fun for the community. The second tip I would say around personal branding is make sure you stay engaged with the people that are following you. If someone comments on a post that you've made, comment back, even if it's nothing more than thanks for your comments. I appreciate you took the time to read my blog. As my wife would say, who was a real estate agent for a while, don't take the easy way out. Don't just list it and forget it, or post it and forget it, as we say here. They're in the market here in Evansville for real estate agents. There's the feeling that some agents just get a listing from a buyer or from a seller and they put it out on the system and assume the other agents are going to bring them a buyer. They don't really work for the money. They list it and forget it. It's kind of how the thought process went. But don't do that with your own personal branding. Stay engaged with the people that are talking to you, and that'll help grow your brand and grow your reputation. Follow your passions would be another thing that I would tell people. Find something you love doing or a cause that you really align with, and talk about it sometimes. Support them as best you can. That's the Project Night Night logo that you're seeing on the screen there that I spend so much time supporting. And then the last tip, mix it up. And it's like, yeah, I know. Oops, it looks like I have a typo. That should say that's just the opposite of tip number 1, not tip number 2. And it is. I mean, I say deliver a consistent message, but I also say mix it up. Kind of strange. But what I've discovered over the years is when you throw something out there that's still kind of true to your passions and what you stand for, but is radically different than the things you normally post, it takes your level of engagement to whole new heights. You get new people starting conversations with you because you've started sharing something new. You'll gain more followers. You'll have more conversations. So once in a while, it's great to throw something out there that's a little, I almost hate to say off brand, but that's kind of how I would describe it as well. And then, you got to start somewhere. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Start a blog, get active on social media, present at a user group meeting, perhaps if you've done something cool at work, share that with your colleagues here on the group meetings. How many of you in the ecosystem have been around long enough to realize Mike Gerholt was the button click admin before he was Mike Gerholt, the Salesforce admin evangelist? He built up his own personal brand with the button click admin so much, Salesforce bought it and created the Salesforce admins podcast and their blog and hired Mike to do it all. So that kind of talks about the benefit of having a strong personal brand is job opportunities may come your way. So let's talk about job searches now. What do you need to do? Where do you search for jobs? Think about, these are some of the things you need to think about. Who do you want to work for, perhaps, or what products do you want to work with? Is there a certain company that you saw a demo of one time that you liked what they had to offer? That may be an opportunity for you to start looking for a job there. It worked for me. Like I mentioned earlier, it took a year and a half for that to happen with Aptus for me. But if you find something you really feel strongly about, that's okay. You can pursue the company rather than go specifically looking for a specific type of job. But in your job search, though, and as you get to the point where you're thinking more along the lines of who do I really want to work for? How do I make a decision on a job offer? The other stuff, that the what else is important to you stuff, that becomes more important, and it should become part of your decision process. So while you're thinking about who to talk to about possible roles, what jobs to apply for, make sure you do your homework. And research the company as much as you can. Look on their website, follow them on social media, see what they're talking about and some of the content they're putting out. But check other sites as well, like Glassdoor, for example, where people post reviews about that company. A lot of times it's former employees of the company or current employees. So you may get some good feedback. You may get some not so good feedback about the company, but it will help paint a clear picture of what it's like at that company. And then you want to think about how you may fit in, whether it's going to be in an office job or if it's still going to be remote once COVID's over. 95% of the jobs in the ecosystem right now are remote simply because of COVID. When COVID is done with, hopefully soon, a lot of companies are going to open their offices back up. I know several companies that have already said, when we open the office up, it's your choice if you want to come back to work in the office or not. You can stay remote. You can do 2 days in the office, 3 days at home, whatever. For me personally, I don't live where my company's office is. They knew that when they hired me, and they know I'm going to stay remote the whole time, and it's fine. And there's plenty of opportunities out there for companies to hire strictly remote employees as well. And just because you see a job advertised on a company's website that says this job's in Chicago, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be in Chicago for that job. So if it's a role you're interested in, pursue it anyway and have that conversation with the company while you're talking to them. The bottom line on that slide, the culture, keep that in mind as well. That's the intangible stuff that makes that company who they are. And that's the things that might make you feel like you fit in better at that organization versus others. So those are big things, in my opinion, to keep in mind. So now let's say you've submitted your job applications a few places, you've had some calls, and you've got some interviews coming up now. So what do you do now, right? Well, today the interviews are not in person, more than likely. They're all over the phone or through Zoom or screen sharing or some other technology. It's possible the company may want to record the interview so they can review it with their other teammates or whatever. I would personally hope they'd ask you for permission before recording it. And in my opinion, I think it's okay to tell them, I noticed you're recording this. I'm not really that comfortable with that. and ask if they will not record it. I don't know what good that'll do, and they may record it anyway. They may say, hopefully they don't say thanks, but we're done with this call and hang up on you, because there was obviously a reason they wanted to talk to you if they gave you an interview already. But there's also technology out there now where artificial intelligence can be running through the interview process or can be processed on those recordings of the calls to try to figure out some of the things within the call. Hopefully it removes bias and presents data as opposed to opinions. So from your perspective, as you're preparing for the interview, probably the one thing everybody needs to figure out is what's your elevator pitch. The company is going to come on the call and say, so tell me a little bit about yourself. That's a very open-ended question. That's your opportunity to say, here's who I am, here's what I stand for, here's the things I've been doing, and here's where I want to go. Here's what I see my career progressing into. And of course, here's how I think I fit into your organization. If you can do that within a couple of minutes, that's what most people would consider an elevator pitch. So think about that, think about where you are now, and start crafting that if you don't already have one that you think is pretty honed. Some of the in-person interview tips I think still apply to the Zoom call interviews. You still want to look good. You still want to present yourself professionally. I hate to say this, but at least from the waist up, but make sure that your camera's pointed in the right way. So you're not going to be the guy who's wearing those boxer shorts with the hearts on them and everybody else on the call sees it. You don't want to have that happen to you. So just keep in mind your appearance because it matters a little bit, even in this weird virtual world. And then, remember your body language too. You don't want to appear that you're ignoring the people on the call. So find where that camera is on your laptop or wherever. Oh, mine's right there. I'm kind of covering it up with my finger now. Make sure you're making eye contact with the camera so that the people you're talking to feel like you're talking to them and that you're looking at them. And you probably don't want to sit back in a chair looking really comfortable with your arms crossed, which is kind of hard for me to do with my arm in a sling right now. But I tried to demonstrate that, and I'd call that an epic fail. But you want to stay engaged with them verbally, physically as well, even though it's over Zoom, just to make it appear that you're interested, even if maybe you're not at that point in time. Maybe you've already figured out it's the wrong role. You still should probably try to maintain some semblance of interest. So interviews are all about questions. It's all about the company finding out more about you and you finding out more about the company. So what are some of the questions that you're going to get asked? Tell us about yourself. I just talked about the elevator pitch. Why do you want this role? What do you think it would be? What do you think you'll be doing? Why do you want to work at this company is another question you may get. And the question that I think scares a lot of people, what are your strengths and your weaknesses? The strengths are usually pretty easy for all of us to identify. That's the things we're good at, that everybody tells us we're good at, or the things we're really passionate about that we just feel good at doing. But the weakness part, that becomes a little bit more of a challenge. We get nervous when somebody says, tell me what your weaknesses are. You might start sweating bullets. You might feel your stomach tumbling a little bit. And you got to be a little careful when you're just talking about your weaknesses. You need to try to be honest about what they are, but you don't want to ruin your chances at the job either. So think about it and think about your wording on a weakness, and don't say, I'm really lousy at whatever it is, but say things like, I'm trying to learn more about how to do Process Builder or whatever. Put a positive spin on it that shows you're eager to learn and that you're trying to do something to convert that weakness into a strength. So I always throw this slide up when I talk about jobs and interviews. As an interviewee, you have certain rights. There's certain things that companies are not supposed to ask you. Hopefully they won't cross the line and ask you that. Like, they're not supposed to be able to ask you, is English your first language? Because you may have an accent and they may be concerned that you can't speak the language well. That's the direct way of saying that. Is English your first language? And that's not exactly right. Not the wording I put on the screen. They're trying to find out where you were born, perhaps, to help identify your culture or things like that, or your accent or whatever. They may say, where are you born? That's pretty direct. I don't think they should be asking you that. The indirect version of that would be, is English your first language? I don't think they should ask you that either. I've never run across any of these in job interviews, but I'm sure some people have. I think my reaction to those kinds of questions, if they're asked, would um, be very careful with them. Um, Answer them carefully or cautiously. If it doesn't bother you to tell somebody that you're from the Middle East or wherever, then fine, go ahead and let them know. But I would also hope that they would be cautious about not asking. I do see somebody posted in the chat just a minute ago that they had a test that they had to take to get the second interview, mostly technical. Great clarification. There are a lot of companies that do technical skills assessments. Sometimes if you're interviewing for a consulting role, the consulting company will send you away with homework to do a mock project for them, where they'll give you a scenario and a set of ground rules, and they'll want you to come back to them a week or two later with a solution designed and built in a Salesforce developer org that then you present to their interview team and field questions from them. They're not necessarily at that point looking for, did you build the ideal solution perfectly? They may be more looking for how you handle the questioning, how you do the presentation, and can you conduct yourself professionally in a consultant client type of relationship. But that's a great point about testing and things like that. So you've had the interview, great, congratulations, you did well, you got a job offer. Well, maybe not yet. Let's just hypothetically say you just finished the interview this morning. Now what do you do? I would suggest a thank you note to the people you talk to. They're probably not expecting it because most people don't do that anymore. I mean, 57% from wherever I found this statistic, and I don't remember where now, did not do any follow-up with the interview. They just waited and to see what the company was going to do. And if the company never responded, they just wrote it off. Excuse me. Sending a thank you note, though, helps keep you top of mind with the company. It helps them remember why they talked to you. Keep it pretty quick, keep it pretty short. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your interview. I really enjoyed talking to you about XYZ, and I hope to hear from you again soon. Something along those lines. And then, the follow-up piece on there that I suggested, if you have any feedback for me, I'd love to make myself a stronger candidate in the future. That gives them the opportunity to open-endedly write right back to you and say, well, here's the things that we liked about you, here's the things that we didn't like as well, or here's areas that we think maybe you can improve. I found myself in a hiring position early in my career for an analyst role, and the company then, we had to post it internally before we went outside the company to look for candidates. And I felt like it was my job, my duty to the people that applied to talk to everybody internally that applied for the role. And then I provided them with feedback on, here's why I'm not moving you forward to round 2 on the interviews, and giving them that feedback so they knew what they could do better for next time, or what skills they needed to pick up on and things like that. And that's probably a little unusual in today's world that people are going to do that, but you could certainly try that and see what offers, see what suggestions they might give you. And then ultimately, when it comes time to making a decision and negotiating perhaps on a salary or on some benefits, usually the person with the most information wins on a negotiation, whether it's the company or you. So make sure you do some research. If they make you a salary offer that's lower than what you expected, or lower than perhaps what you feel is fair market value, make sure you really understand what fair market value is. Do your research. Glassdoor is another one of those sites that has salary information on it. Mason Frank, one of the recruiting companies in the Salesforce ecosystem, puts out an annual salary survey of various positions at various levels around the world, from surveys they take from hundreds of people all across the world. So get a hold of that kind of content so you kind of have a feel for what your value is. There's still differences in market value for a Salesforce administrator living and working in San Francisco versus living and working in Evansville, Indiana. Cost of living is vastly cheaper here than in San Francisco, which is potentially why remote employment might become beneficial for people living in smaller communities, because you might get a salary that's a little closer to living in the big city than rather than what you might see locally with a company that's in your area. So now it's decision time. You've got a job offer or maybe multiple offers. What do you do, right? How do I figure out which one's best for me, which company's right, which job is right? Literally write it down, create a checklist, check off the boxes with everything that's good about those organizations. First, you got to obviously figure out what's important to you. Salary and benefits, most likely that's very important for everybody. Is it a remote job or is it an in-office, or will it be a mix once COVID's over? What's the company culture like? Does the company value diversity in their leadership and in their workforce? Do you value diversity? Do you align on your values? Is the company a Pledge 1% company and they always give back to charitable organizations? Those types of things you need to keep in mind. And of course, can I move forward? Can I grow in this company? Will there be an opportunity for me to take a different position in a year and 2 years and grow my career here? Or will I need to look for another job elsewhere if I want to progress to the next level? So, you know, make your list, check it twice. Some of the other things that some people I know that have tried to bargain in to their jobs. Can I go to Dreamforce every year? Will the company support me doing that? Or will they just give me time to go to Dreamforce? For most people that I know, Dreamforce is a big deal. They'd love to go every year. The community-led events could certainly be a bargaining tool that you could use. You want to go, you want to attend. Perhaps the companies might say, we'll support you if you're speaking, which great, right? You've got something to say. Hopefully you've learned enough that by now, or by the time those events roll around, that you'll have something that you want to say and you can submit it to present at those events and hopefully get selected as well. So the last thing I had on my agenda was giving back. I don't actually have a slide for that one. So I'll just leave up my contact info on that one while I talk about that a little. For me, I feel like the community has provided most of my jobs since I've been in this ecosystem. And that's probably the big driver behind everything I do, why I started a local community group, why I run Midwest Raymond every year, why I spend a lot of time talking to other user groups and talking one-on-one with people who may just need someone to bounce an idea off of. I open my virtual door for those kinds of conversations a lot to people who are new to the ecosystem or maybe not so new, and they're trying to figure out what their next move should be. Maybe they're unhappy at their job, or they're just looking for a change and they don't know what to do, or they're concerned about something. If that becomes you, hit me up on Twitter, on LinkedIn, send me a message. I would be glad to make time on a calendar to spend a half an hour with you to hear out what you're thinking and offer my advice to you as well. Paying for certifications. I see that in the chat window. That's a great one. That would be fantastic if the companies would do that. Personally, I've known a lot of companies that do that to a certain amount, to a certain extent. Going back to that consulting scenario I gave earlier, some consulting companies will hire you without certifications as long as you can achieve one within the first 3 or 6 months of your time at that company. And usually in that situation, they help you pay for the certification too. So if those things are important to you, of course, make sure that's part of what's going on there too. So, anybody have any questions that I can entertain now? I don't know how we're doing on time, if we have time for that right now or not, but you know, if we don't, hit me up later with questions and I'll be happy to answer them offline too.
Thanks, Eric. It was great. Great, inspiring story. Your story was inspiring, and all the tips and tricks were inspiring. Plus, despite your arm issue, you came, and you know that it speaks a lot about that Kevin Bacon role that you have. So,
thanks for having me.
So great of you to just come despite everything. It's great. So anybody wants to share the mic and please ask questions right now if you want.
Eric, I have one question. Hello?
Sure, go right ahead.
Thank you for your presentation. It's an amazing achievement. I have a background with CRM. I'm just struggling to get into the job market. I have a field service, CPQ from Oracle side, but I'm trying to get a certification in Salesforce. So if I connect with you, like as you said, for half an hour, maybe I can speak to you or give me some advice. Is it okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's totally fine.
I
Yeah.
already sent you a message through the LinkedIn. So
Okay, perfect.
thank you so much.
Sure.
It's a very great story,
You're not you're not in a place where you're alone. That's for sure.
I
It's a
know.
unique position. I mean, it's not truly unique, but it's an interesting position to be in where you have CRM experience, but not necessarily Salesforce experience. And one of the things that I would say really quickly is try to highlight CRM as more so than specifically whichever CRM it was you were using when you're in a cover letter or in a resume. Emphasize more of the CRM technology rather than Oracle CRM or whichever one it was, to kind of genericize it, if that makes any sense. But we can talk more later. I
Yeah,
appreciate
but
your question.
I do have a Salesforce CRM last almost 2 to 3 years. I
Okay.
am a Salesforce admin certified, but I'm trying to get into real field service and the CPQ tools.
Okay.
That will be more useful for with my skill set if I
Sure.
get into job market.
Yeah, you and I can chat some more offline.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Now we can give it over to Dan because he has a long demo and presentation in front of us. As Eric mentioned, that anybody who needs extra help can ping him and shoot him a question over a chat or book a time with him. Thanks, Eric, so much. Dan, I'll give it over to you. Should I start a poll? Did you want a poll, Dan?
I think we have enough information at this point to know what the overall experience is in with our audience in the Salesforce ecosystem, and I'll just keep it simple when it comes to providing information about what Salesforce is. I don't want to spend too much time on that, so we'll play it by ear. Before we start, Eric, thank you very much for all the info. Shiva, thank you very much for organizing this. And if I can add one thing, because I've been monitoring the chats, and I just want to add something to when it comes to the interviews. In my career, I had to interview lots of people, and we had a broad range of expertise and personalities. And one of the things that I looked for was, can this person learn? So I don't expect somebody to join the organization, know everything from the get-go, but can they learn? If there's something that they don't know, can they go and learn and figure it out on their own? And the other one that I look for is the soft skills. And what I mean by that, sometimes you end up hiring somebody who's going to fight you on everything. And I mean it when I say fight you on everything. There's a way to present your opinions, but that's different than than fighting somebody on every decision that is made. Without taking too much time on this, sometimes decisions are made for various reasons that might not be shared with the rest of the team. And it's how do I work with this person in the end? Are we going to be able to work together, or are they going to be pushing back on everything that is being said or done? I hope that helps the group here whenever you go for an interview, just to keep that in mind. And one of the an advice that I heard somewhere, and I don't remember where it was, when you're in the interview, look at the people interviewing you and imagine your best friend. That will hopefully put a smile on your face, and it opens up the communication, it changes the dynamic of the interview a little bit. All right, so now we're going to switch gears. We're going to go to the Salesforce Community Cloud. As Shiva mentioned, now it's called the Experience Cloud. And the way we're going to approach this presentation, I'm going to skip this. You already know who I am. The way we're going to approach this, we're going to go through these topics here. I'm going to try to stay on the slides as much as I can, and then focus more on the settings, the build itself. We're not going to build a community, but we're going to look at something that's already built. But my goal here is to spend more time on the community itself rather than trying to talk about Salesforce and all that. Before we get started, any questions from the audience? All right, I will keep moving. And if you're new to Salesforce and you need to get a developer org, that's how you get it. This is where you go to sign up, and it's your dev org. You get it free for life. I think now they have a rule where if you don't log in at least once a year, they're gonna delete that org. And let's, before we go here, here's an example of a community that uses a lot of the out-of-the-box functionality that you get with Builder. And that's what they call their environment where you start building your community. They call it Builder, and everything starts from the experience workspaces. And we're going to get there, but just for now, I want you to sort of get an idea of what that might look like. And as you look at this, I can tell you, if I were somebody looking at this for the very first time, I can already spot some of the things that are out of the box, like this is a component right at the bottom. If you go here, this is another one, ask a question, and that creates a discussion within the community, and you can create a poll within this particular community. And here's another one. This is also built on the Community Cloud. Looks different, but if you start picking at it a little bit, you start seeing some of the common elements of a community. And here's your articles that are surfaced from within Salesforce. We're going to get to that. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but we're going to get to this at some point when we go and explore the community workspaces. And you can customize these communities to, if you want to make them pixel perfect, you can make them pixel perfect. If you want to use a template, you can use that as well. So now that you know what you can work towards in terms of building that community, let's talk a little bit about how you can present that community to your users. And I need you to wrap your head around visitors. So those will be guest users that go to your community, and they might just see the login page, or they might see other pages within your community that you made public. And then you have members of your community. And what we mean by members is folks that actually have a user account in your community. And we're going to expand on that a little more. But once they become members, you have a number of licenses that you can assign to those people that now are members of your registered members of your community. And if you look at this one here, you can have a customer community, and there are two parts to this. I'm going to get to that in a second. Then you have partner communities. And in my opinion, these are the most common kinds of licenses that you would need for your community. In addition to customer community, you also have the customer community plus. And let me just switch quickly here to licenses. And you will find Salesforce provides you a help document for communities that is specific to communities. However, keep in mind that when it comes to licenses, this is all under the Salesforce org, not under your community documentation files. So I'm just going to paste this in the chat here. And I keep saying this whenever I talk to people about communities. If there is one page of documentation that you want to read when it comes to communities, it's this one here. It'll tell you a lot about what it takes to expose your community to users, and I'm talking about registered users specifically. And when you go through this, it clarifies what customer community versus customer community plus is, and what kind of features you get with one license versus the other. And the other thing that it covers is this here, where they talk about named licenses versus login. And if you're looking at the screen here, this license here is called customer community. This one is customer community login, and it does create a bit of confusion, but just bear with me for a second. Once you assign somebody a named license, that license stays with that person. You can have 100 communities in your org. You only need one license. If that person logs in into all 100 communities you have, you only use one license. For the login type of license, that is a pool of licenses. I log in today, I used up one license. You log in tomorrow, you use the same license that I used. And I hope that makes sense to you, because I get a lot of questions about how these licenses work together, and do I need to buy 10,000 licenses or 500 licenses, or whatever, whatever your needs are. And there's a good explanation here on how the login licenses work. And there's also something about reducing the session timeout for those login licenses, so we can actually use that pool of licenses for multiple users in a period of 24 hours. And the use case here I have for the login licenses is, think of a billing portal where people can go in and they don't need to log in every single day of the month. Well, in that case, you don't want to spend a lot of money on buying regular customer community licenses. You buy a pool of licenses that you share across your members, and that saves you money, and it's obviously it's more efficient for you to do it that way. There's also some information about what you get with various types of communities and various types of licenses. Page views. So I encourage you to go to this page and review it if you're interested in some of the limitations when it comes to standing up a community, because this is important in regards to who can actually go to it and how often they can go to it and what they're going to get out of it. And the other thing that it gives you here is access to various things. For example, a customer community license will give you access to accounts, but it's not going to give you access to campaigns. If you look at the partner community license, it does make sense to give these folks access to campaigns, because you might be working with partners, you have a campaign, and you want them to make use of all those campaigns that are going to generate leads for them in order to grow their business and grow your business, because they're your partners. So there's a lot of information in here. You don't need to memorize it all, especially if you're trying to pass your exam, but this is something that clarifies things before you start building your community. And there's a few other things, number of objects that you can access, API calls, not all that important. And there's something about marketing as well, that goes to the partners, and a few things about sharing. And we're going to cover that as we move forward. Just go back to my deck here. So I hope this is clear for you. Let me just go here. Profiles. If you have your Salesforce admin certification already, you know that best practice is to keep working. You know that, hold on a second, because my computer here decided to time out. Here we go. As a best practice, don't use the standard profiles, clone them and use those. just to avoid any kind of limitations when it comes to editing the profiles. And I just wanted to put that out there for the folks who are new to Salesforce in general. And sharing settings, I want to go back to my browser here and talk about sharing settings for a second. There are two key things to keep in mind when it comes to sharing, and one of them is you have your internal settings for your organization, for the internal user. So that's the organization-wide default settings, and you have internal and external. Basically, the external ones are your guest users. And before you roll out that community, you need to make sure that you take a look at these things here and make sure that they are aligned with your requirements. The other one is here, user visibility. Portal user visibility means that if I am a contact or a user under account A, and you're also a user under account A, we can see each other in that community. Think discussions, think some user records as well. If it is community user visibility, then it doesn't matter which account I belong to, we can still see each other. And there's, let me just go back here to see if I have an example like this, ask a question, or these users here when it comes to reputation and all that. Let me go back to this one. And then you have some other things here in regards to sharing sets and all that for various objects. But keep this in mind when you're doing this, when you're setting up your community. And we're going to get to this in a second. Let me just take a look at my slide. So that's your sharing settings. Company info and system overview. There we go. So this is company information. This is where you monitor your licenses rather, and system overview. Here we go. The reason I bring this up is because at some point, especially if you're dealing with partners, you're going to start creating roles. And if you have a lot of accounts and you have a lot of roles, it's so easy to go over the amount of roles that you can have in your org. Now remember that you can have 100 communities in your org, but the roles are for your entire org. And the maximum you can have, it's this one here. The maximum you can have, it's 50,000. You can increase this up to 100,000, but you would have to go to your account executive from Salesforce and work with them to bump it up to 100. And let's go back to the deck here. Sharing, we were talking about sharing. These are some of the options you have in regards to sharing. And again, it all hinges on the type of license that you're using. We're going to spend a little bit of time on this. And if you, here, let me go back here. So if you're looking at sharing sets, this is how this works. For external users, you have sharing sets. In this example, they all tie into the account, and then you have your internal users for those cases. And one feature in Salesforce that you can use that enables you to drop down that number of roles, but still expose some visibility across records is the super user. You would have to enable that, but to visualize how the super user works, you have your roles, partner, manager, and executive. And without the super user, this is the kind of visibility you have, down and lateral. And once you make somebody here a super user, now at the same level, they can see the records that belong to another executive, for example, or another manager or another user. So keep that in mind when you configure your community. And the other thing that I want to mention is domains. Let me just go to domains for a second. Domains. You'll see that in my dev work here, I have some domains already. Because this is a dev work, I cannot create a domain. But ideally, if you're standing up a community, you want that community to either have its own domain or be aligned with your marketing requirements, where they want you to use a specific domain or a subdomain. In that case, you need to create that in here. And don't confuse that with my domain. That's for your org. This is my domains. We can't, like I said, we can't create one here because this is a dev work. In a production work, you can have those domains that make sense to you. Okay, let's move on to community settings. And after this, we're gonna switch gears and go to communities. So this is to building the community router. And this is the roles I was talking about. You'll see in here that you can have up to 3, and keep an eye on that, especially if you're dealing with partners. And I can't remember when they introduced the customer roles. I think it's probably in the last year or so. So now this is also available to you, but usually it's really the partner roles that are going to impact the total number. For customer communities, there's also a feature that it's called delegated admin, but for that you would need the customer community plus license. So in other words, if you want somebody to manage other users within their own account, you can leverage that functionality, and now you can have those people log in, create a new user, or deactivate a user, or change the settings for the other users that are under that account. And here's where you enable that super user access. There's a little more to it. You'll have to look at some permissions as well, but this is one of the settings that you need to look at. And you might want to consider how long the welcome email link will be available to your users. And you'll hear me talk about the welcome email once we go to the community. But just to quickly touch on that, what happens is when you add a new member to your community, Salesforce sends a welcome email to that user to have that person finalize their the completion of their user record in Salesforce. And you have 3 options in here: 1 day, 7 days, and basically half a year. If it is something that needs to happen quickly, you fit that to 1 day. If it's something that they can go in and they can sign up whenever they want, you can make it up to 180 days. But the other thing that I want to draw your attention to is this sharing sets. And when we're looking at the deck, we talked about the sharing sets and how they work. But this is what a sharing set would look like. First of all, you figure out which profiles you want this sharing set to be applied to. And then in terms of what this looks like, it's basically if this user belongs to this account, and this case belongs to the same account, then the users that have this profile within that account can see that case. So I hope this makes sense to you. I know it takes a little while to understand how it works, but we're saying for these profiles and for the account, we're sharing the records for this object. Okay, let me just cancel out of here. And going back to the deck here, we covered the community settings. And now we're going to go to the templates. So let's go back here. Under all communities, these are the ones that I have in my organization. And we will be spending some time on this one here, the Udemy one. We will be going, just for comparison reasons, we're going to go between Udemy and WIT 01, just to give you an idea of what it takes to, what it looks like when it's out of the box and what it looks like when you start making some changes to your community. And from this section here, all communities, you can go straight to the builder. And in a second, we're going to go to that, or you can go to workspaces. And that's a listing of all the workspaces you have available to you to manage your community. And if you want to create a new community, from the new button here, the new community button, Once you click on it, you're going to be presented with a number of options in terms of what kind of template you want to use to create that community. All the templates in here that have this lightning bolt logo here are lightning ready. They're responsive. They're designed to work in a lightning environment, responsive design rather. You have some other ones that are actually Visualforce pages. So if you wanted to do a highly customized community that you can also surface in your Salesforce mobile app, you would most likely go with this one. And we are not going to cover the Salesforce tabs and Visualforce pages template. We'll focus on the lightning ones, but keep in mind that you have that option there. And this is either using Salesforce tabs if you wanted to do that, or highly customized using Visualforce pages. Next to it, you have this one that doesn't have the lightning bolt, the Aloha template. This one is really for creating a central workspace where now you can go and log in, doing single sign-on and log in into other apps within your organization. As you can see here, they have Office 365 and WebEx and a bunch of other things. We're not going to spend too much time on that one. What we're going to do is we will focus on the customer service template. And if you wanted to do a customer portal, I also have this one here that I installed, but there's the partner template as well that you can use. So when you pick one and you get started, let me see what I have here. So there's a few examples of what this community might look like once you roll it out. But once you click started, you have to give it a name, and you also have to give it that URL. And if you look at some of these examples that I gave you, they're not really using a specific URL. This S here is the default one, but you can have something else in here that could be marketing, or it could be partners. And when you click create, Salesforce is going to start creating this for you. And you are going to end up with something like this. And this is the community that I built and I used in my Udemy course. It is different because it is customized, but this is the out of the box one. And these are the workspace. These are the workspaces that we were talking about. So let me go back to workspaces here. And let me go back in here because I want you to understand how you can get there. So if I click on if I click on workspaces for this particular community here, and also note that the two of them are inactive. Another one is preview. In order for you to have a community that is live and available to users, you have to activate it. And we're going to cover that once we go through some of the workspaces in there. But once you click on Builder, for example, that is going to take you here. And when you click on workspaces, it's going to take you here. And from here, you have the workspaces that you're going to be working with. The guided setup, it's a little misleading in my opinion. All it gives you is links to Trailhead and some documentation to learn more about how you can set up your community. You also have some quick links in here to help you with researching and gain some more knowledge about communities. And by the way, I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the demo. We're going to stick with the community terminology. We're not going to call it Experiences Cloud because it's going to confuse people. But the workspaces that we're going to be focusing on are going to be builder, administration, a little bit about gamification, a little bit about content. If we have time, we're going to go to moderation, and I would like to cover moderation. And also, if I have time, we're going to go to dashboards as well. And before we go to any of these workspaces, let's take a look at what we have in here. So you've already seen me clicking on this here, on this button at the top in the left, right, in the top left corner. And this is a quick navigation to either going to other communities in your org, going to setup, going straight to workspaces if you wanted to go to this view, or going to a particular workspace in the community that you're working on at that time. And once you go into, let's go here to Builder. Once you go to that community in that particular workspace, you have at the top, you have some things that are already predefined, like publish and preview. You also have the form factor, a form factor view for your community. And currently we're on desktop, but you can look at mobile. That's what it's going to look like. And you have some other options when it comes to changing the views and what components you can show on the mobile view and what you don't want to show. And you have the tablet as well. And any questions so far before I move on to covering the other workspaces? We're going to come back to the builder later on. If you have any questions, just go off mute and ask. It's hard for me to monitor the questions on the chat, but if we don't have any questions, I'm just going to keep moving. And let's take a look at our workspaces for this particular community. So let's go to workspaces. And let's go with content management. And basically, content management is a way for you to surface articles, knowledge records or articles from within Salesforce. This is a broad topic. We are not going to spend a lot of time here. We could probably talk for a couple of hours just looking at content management and what it does for you. But what I want to touch on is, if you go to topic management, you can create topics, and this is going to help your users. The way to think about topics is, one, how to organize them in your navigational menu, and also how your users can search for those articles in your community. So in other words, if somebody wanted to look for power in the let me quickly just flip to this one just so I have to, and let me go to builder. And preview. So if somebody wanted to search here for power, and I'm not logged in, so that is probably a restriction. I see it even says welcome guest because I have audiences enabled. But if somebody searched for power and I had an art, actually, let me try car. There you go. So if somebody searched for car, because these articles are already tagged, quote unquote, tagged as car, those articles will come up in that search. So this is what content really helps you do. The other thing that it does is it enables you to create recommendations. And we're going to get to that in a second. But in terms of navigation topics, so now I have cars, boats, and airplanes. And if I want to add another one, I just do it from here. Type it in, power, and add. And then you can edit it from here. You can add a banner if you wanted to, and then you can customize it from there. So now that we have an idea of what this means, in terms of limitations, I encourage you to read this before you do anything else, because sometimes you might have way too many topics and you're going to run into problems, and you're going to be wondering why that is happening. Now, feature topics, on the other hand, is, and you have a good explanation right here, they're displayed on your home page. And you might wonder, how can I use feature topics? Well, feature topics, when we get to audiences, feature topics enables you to put something in somebody's face, so to speak. That could be a new product, it could be a new training video, it could be something else that you want to push to them as soon as they go to that home page. And that home page, when we get to the builder, can be customized, and it can be tweaked to target certain audiences. But that's what this does here. And in terms of article management, there's different ways to get to it. If we look at this one here, now I can add other topics. And remember, we had the power one. I can do it in here, and I can add power, save. And when I do my search in the search bar, and I look for power, because that's my keyword, that article is going to pop up as well, because now it's tagged with those two words. You also have an option to have automatic topic assignment. It's a different thing that we need to cover, but all you need to keep in mind is that if somebody creates an article and there's no topic assigned to it, what is that quote unquote tag that is going to be attached to that article. And in terms of recommendations, read this. I know I should be expanding on this, but it is something that takes a lot of time to really understand properly. And the tool you have to leverage here is the components that you use when you build your pages, the recommendations component, and then the channels that you want to use. And you can create new ones. And basically, if you have a component that says, I'm using channel 3, and under channel 3, I have article X, that's what that recommendation component is going to surface to people who go to that page. And audiences, this is something that actually, let me just expand on this one, because I think it's important for you to understand this as well. This audience is, in my case, it's called new community members. And basically what I said in here is, this is new members. And if they joined in the last 30 days, that's an audience that I want to target with some of the articles that I have there. So think somebody who just joined, and going back to that comment I made earlier about the billing portal. Well, if you just joined and you have no idea how to make a payment in that payment portal, maybe a good article that I need to surface to you is a video on how to use the site and what cards you can use, and maybe reinforce the idea that this is a PCI compliant website. There are other ways you can do this. We don't have time to really explore all that, but this is what audiences in this context help you with. So before I move to another workspace, any questions? No. All right, so let's go back to our workspaces. And
Dan, there was one question from Sudeep. He said that do companies typically start with community login licenses and then, depending on usage, move to named licenses, assuming community login is cheaper option?
I can't really comment on the costs. Logic would dictate that if you have a pool of licenses, then you don't need as many. The reality is you need to make a judgment call, if you will, to understand how many people are going to be logging into your community and how often. So the key here is how often. And what I mean by that is, let's just say, for the sake of simplicity, let's just say we have only one login license for our org, and I log in today and Shiva logs in today as well. So now technically we have an overlap, and we might think we need 2 licenses. The reality is that is not the case. When you read the documentation here, let me see if I can find that tab again. Here, when you read the documentation, they actually average that across 12 months. So yes, you might be non-compliant because you had 2 people logging in at the same time and you only had 1 license. But when they do the average over the 12-month period, where is it? I'm trying to find it here. It's a wash if we don't keep doing it. I hope that answers your question. See, I'm trying to find it now and I can't find it, but I can guarantee you it's somewhere in here. The explanation is definitely in here. Here. This gives you, this tells you how the overage is calculated, how our login overage is calculated, and it's over 12 months. So at that point, Salesforce will say, hey, you need to buy a little more, you need to buy more licenses. Again, it's how many users, how often. And if you think you're going to go over that number of licenses, then you need to work with your account executive to have the right licenses in place. All right, let me go quickly to moderation because I think this is important. And this is a quick view of what is going on with your moderation. I want to go to rules. Moderate really is for you to take action on what's happening with your community. But in terms of rules, you have 2 types of rules. So you have the content criteria. So you have moderation, it's content criteria and member criteria. So the difference is you would the member criteria, and I don't know why Salesforce decided to do it in this order, because in my head at least, it makes a little more sense to start with who's this rule going to apply to, and the other one is what is this rule. So if you look at this one, let's look at this one, partner competition. Well, what I wanted to build here is this is going to be applied to, where is it? There we go. So this could be, it's applied to partners. There we go. So rather than using profiles, it's going to be applied to partners. So we know right off the bat that if this is a partner license, whatever that partner license looks like, those individuals are going to be targeted by this criteria. And we're not going to look into when the user was created and this one here where if they don't have any contributions and all that, we're just going to say we don't really care about the filtering in this case. But now I know that I'm targeting these particular individuals, these particular members. But what am I targeting them for? Well, how about this? If I see, let me go in here. If these users start putting in their discussions or in anything in their things like cheap, competition, defective, horrible, pricing, service, now I can do something with that criteria. I can take action. And in this case, I'm flagging it. You have other things that you can do, like if they use profanity, I can block those words. So they're replaced with something else at that point. But in this case, for this rule, what I want to say is if somebody in the partner world says the word horrible in their conversations, I want to know why they're saying that. So I can go there and say, because they might say, you know what, Dan's company is horrible. I'm working with somebody else, and those guys are so much better. And I want to take action before things go from bad to worse. So I hope that helps you understand how this works. And you can add, I believe you can have across your word, you can have each keyword set can have up to 2,000 keywords in it. So each keyword list can have up to 2,000 words in it. And then if you have 2001 words, then you need to have a new keyword list. Now, in terms of moderation rules, now this is where I'm putting all this together. So I want to go to the competition talk here. And if you look at this one, it says this rule is active, and keep that in mind because you will create a rule and it's not going to kick in even though you create it because it's not active. But then what does this rule apply to? Well, it applies to posts and comments, and the action is to flag it rather than replace. And if you want to replace profanity words, for example, you would use this one, and that is going to give you some other options there. But in terms of how the rule is built, it says I want to pick the partner's competition rule that I created here on the member criteria, and I wanted to look for what? I wanted to look for this criteria, this content criteria. Does that make sense? I know it can be confusing, but once you start looking at it, it starts making some sense. And this is where you'd go to manage whatever those rules are doing for you. So let's go back to workspaces. And in terms of gamification, basically gamification is all about badges. Who's getting a badge when they post a comment or when they update a profile image or something like that. So I don't want to spend too much time here because we're about 15 minutes out. Dashboards, this helps you monitor and manage your community in terms of what is happening with the community, how many logins, new members, et cetera, et cetera. But in terms of these dashboards here, you can manage the dashboards and you can change what dashboards you're using from here. So this is your settings, and these are the dashboards that you have in your org already that you can use. And if you want to create a new one, let's just say this is Dan's dashboard, and I want to map it to something else. Then I look for my, let me just browse, scroll here. I just look for that particular dashboard in my org and pick it up. So let's just pick this one just for kicks. And once I save it, one of these tabs now is going to be Dan's dashboard. What this helps you do though is if you look, let me just cancel here so I can scroll. You can change the home dashboard that you look at. So you can customize some of this. In terms of engagement, these are the folders that you have access to, and it's the same idea. Let me go to settings. Again, mapping, label for these tabs, mapping to a folder. Going back to workspaces, and I know I'm going a little fast, but I want to cover Builder now because that's where you will be spending most of your time. Sorry, before we go there, I just want to go quickly to administration. Shiba, are we okay for another 10 minutes? I know it was supposed to be an hour, but can we go a little longer? You're on mute. You're on mute. Shiba, you're on mute.
Sorry. So I said, yes, that should be fine because this is, if somebody has to drop off because of the time, they can always catch up on the recording later. But we can certainly, if you're giving us all this knowledge, it will be great if we can cover it.
Okay, excellent. And if you drop off, just remember that the coupon for the course, I can only issue that next month. So you'll have to wait until February, and, and stay in touch with Shiba to get the coupon. All right, so let's go back to administration. This is where you activate your community. This is the URL to your community. Remember, we were talking about that domain when we started talking about building the community. And in terms of preferences, I encourage you to look at all these options in here. Some of them will be applicable to you. What's important though is the default owner. So what I mean by that, if you're allow your members to upload files, for example, or create cases, you need to make sure that you have a default owner for that. Quick word of caution. If you have, and I can't remember now, but I think it's 1 million or 10 million records for one owner. If you start seeing some performance issues, look into this, because you might want to start looking into record ownership as well. And the other one is the size of the files that they can upload. If you look at the info here, the default size is 2 gigs. You do not want people to upload 2 gigs of files in your org. You're going to be running out of storage space very quickly, and that's going to create a new set of problems for you. So tweak that, make it your own, and also you want to make sure that you control what kind of files they upload. In terms of members, and when we started talking about communities, we're talking about that welcome email that goes out. When you add a profile to the community, everybody that has that, every user record that has that profile is going to become a member, and that welcome email is going to be sent to them. And this is where you manage that. You have customer, internal, or partner. Or obviously you can do all, and that's going to filter this. But if you have your customers in here, let me just quickly click on this. Let me go to all. Oh, sorry, it didn't pick the customer one because it already added to the community. But if you go to, where's my other one? Workspaces here, administration. Oh, that's the old one. Sorry, give me 1 second. I want you to see what that looks like once you go to a vanilla community. So if you look at this one here, there's nothing here other than the system administrator. And that is in there by default. When you want to add your members to this community, you just add their profiles or permission sets to these 2 boxes in here. And you can, like I said, you can filter by internal, all users and all of that. Be careful. If you remove the administrator from here, you will be locked out. And you can't go anywhere else in Salesforce setup to do that. You'll have to use some sort of API tool, think Dale Loader or something along those lines, to add that administrator back to the community. So whatever you do not remove the system administrator unless you know exactly what you're doing. There's a way to get back in here, but chances are that you're going to be locking yourself out. Not chances, but I can guarantee you will be locking yourself out if you remove it. And also there's some customization in here if you wanted to change the names for the roles, customer, partner, and employee. Not important in this context, but I wanted you to see this. And where were we? So if we go back in here, we covered that. Let me just cancel. Contributors, we're not going to spend too much time in here. Think people who are going to, you build a community, now you need people who are going to be managing your community. That could be people editing, people adding new content, managing some users. It's pretty straightforward once you go in here. Login and registration. You can customize, you can add your logo in here, you can change settings to what that is going to look like. And we're talking about branding for the login and registration page. Also, you can, and you need to remember this, you can change the login page for your users. And the reason I'm trying to emphasize this is because in our case, we have the default login page, but if you look at the options in here, you can have a visual force page. What that means, you can build a visual force page, leverage workflows in Salesforce, and now start doing things for things like self-registration, where if you have an account number, for example, I'm going to assign you this kind of license. If you don't have an account license, I'm going to assign this other license to you. So now you're managing that self-login process in a way that takes work away from administrators to go in and assign the right license or do things behind the scenes manually. And I hope that is clear to you in regards to the flexibility that you have by leveraging these options and the automation that is already built into Salesforce. Okay. The other thing is social sign-on, and in this case, for this particular community, we have Salesforce, Facebook enabled, and if you go to the other community, if we go to login and registration, there's nothing, no customization, nothing. This option is already available because it's already predefined in my org, but it's not enabled. And if we go to the authentication providers in here, let me just open that in a new tab. It's going to take us to this view. And this is where you create your auth providers. In our case, we have Facebook, but you can add LinkedIn, Apple ID, there's open auth, I think. Let me just go quickly in here just to show you the options. There you go, GitHub, Google. These are the auth providers that you can use. There's the one I was thinking of, OpenID Connect. So you can, if you have good developers on your team and all that, you can use this one to provide other authentication providers to your users. So let me cancel out of here. And I don't want to get into the weeds of how this works, because this can get really complicated. But if you go to edit, one thing you have in here, some of them are going to be by default, but you need to use this. You need to use the, here we go, the registration handler. And I covered this in my course. I actually provide the class that you need to use for this because you need to make changes to it. And clicking on the search button here is not going to do anything. But let me go to classes. And I know I'm getting into the weeds here, but I want you guys to understand how this works, because sometimes it can get really confusing. Here we go. If we go to this one here, basically this is the class we're using for that registration handler. And it starts with setting some default values for the default account name, and we're talking about a work here that is not a person that does not use person accounts. This is you do self-registration. We're going to assign you to this default account now. Person accounts, it's a different conversation. If you don't provide an account name, it's going to go to person accounts. But in order to enable person accounts in your org, you need to work with Salesforce. You need to open a case with Salesforce to open that. And also the profile that is going to be assigned to the folks self-registering using single social sign-on. And then all that is used later on. So this is way too technical. If you need to look into this, there is some information on various sources, but I can help you with it. And like I said, the course covers this with enough details. All right, so let's go back to this here, the login and registration. And if you look at this, here's the profile that we're using. And you kind of got a glimpse of that when we were talking about the social sign-on and the default account that we're using when people don't use social sign-on. And in terms of allowing self-registration, you need to enable that. So just because you have a community doesn't mean that people can actually create an account. You need to enable that. When it comes to partners, and I need to expand on this a little bit. When it comes to partners, the process is you need to enable an account as a partner. Once you enable that account as a partner, now you have the option to make the contacts under that account community users. So they are accounts. They start life as contacts, but then through various options you have in there, and that's a broad topic as well, you're making them community users. So it's that is not a self-registration. That is you taking action to make those contacts users in your community. I'm hoping I'm not confusing you too much with this, but keep the distinctions between the three options. So there's the self-registration, there's the partner accounts, and then there's the guest users, and we're going to touch on that as well. All right, let's go to emails, and these are the email that this is the email I was telling you about, the welcome email. If you are developing your community in a sandbox, and then you need to deploy that brand new community to your production, or you need to deploy changes to your community to production, make sure you disable this. The chances of deploying something with this enabled, and then all your community users getting a new email saying, go and, hey, welcome to the community, are rather high. And it'll create confusion, dissatisfaction with your users. So make sure that you keep this in the back of your head when you're making changes to your community users, or when you're making changes to the profile membership of your users, because you might be changing users from one profile to another, or adding new profiles to your community. This is where you control that. And in terms of what that email looks like, it's your standard email template functionality that you use in your Salesforce. And the same goes for forgot password, change password, you create templates. And when folks go to I forgot my password, click on that link, they get that template that you can definitely customize, or you can use a new one. All right, let's go to pages. Again, you can change the home page to a Visualforce page if you wanted to do that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in here. Reputation levels, you can have a lot of levels in here. For this org, we only have new expert in Genius, and let me go to a vanilla one. Just cancel this. Oh, it's not enabled. Anyway, let me go back to my other one. And you can have other ones, but basically what happens is, as your users do things in your org, they start accumulating points. And these are the points. You do something, you get 1.5 points, 100 points, whatever that is. You like something, or you answer a question. Those points are going to start accumulating, and then you're going to get your reputation. Where this comes in handy is, especially in a community that is designed to help other users, eventually people who are answering questions are going to become experts or geniuses, and the trust in their answers is going to grow based on their reputation level, which is driven by the points that they accumulate. Think engineering, or think architecture, think, I don't know, repairs. Who would you trust? Somebody who does not have a reputational level, or somebody who's already a genius or a super genius? Rich apps, we're not going to touch on that. That's custom development. But I want to go back to my workspaces in here. Any questions so far? I want to go to Builder and spend about 15 minutes on Builder.
Yeah, there's a question from Yamu. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask it directly? So the question is, can we create dashboards for guest users? Also moderation available for guest users?
The short answer is yes. And I need to expand on that a little bit. The dashboards that we looked at, though these dashboards are for the people managing your community. So in other words, you can have your community manager, system administrators that need to go in there and see what is happening with your community. However, if you have a dashboard that is built in Salesforce that you want to expose to other users, then you need to put that on a page somewhere in your community. And if we go here, I think I had one in my, trying to remember now. I had that on one of the pages. Here you go. So this is a component, a dashboard component. If you see this, so this is a dashboard component that is pulling a dashboard from my Salesforce and exposing it to whoever has access to this page. And the reason I'm saying this is because this is the home page, but might not be available to guest users. But also the guest users might not have access to the dashboard. So think permissions. Remember when we started talking about this, we're looking at internal versus external permissions and access to objects. So the answer is yes, you can do it, but you need to consider permissions as well. Okay. And I hope that answers your question. There was something else I wanted to cover. Just take a quick look here. Oh, so under content management, before I go there, I want to talk about CMS Connect. So if you have a WordPress site somewhere that you want to repurpose the same digital assets that you have on that website, you can create a CMS connection that is going to pull data from that website. So for this particular website, for this particular community, I have a link, if you will, or a pipe into that website. And if I click on edit, it's going to show me that I am going to a WordPress CMS source. So CMS stands for Content Management System. You can have multiple CMS sources, Adobe Experience Manager, Drupal, others. So if you have developers, you can use others. For this one here, we're using WordPress, and this is where the public API the public API information is for that website. And what we're using is a JSON file that basically says, and again, this is technical. I don't expect you to understand it right now, but basically this says, if I want to look at one item on that page and think item as one blog, how do I get to it? Well, this is how you can access it, whatever that item is. But if I want to look at a collection of blogs, this is how you get to it. Again, super technical. We can't cover this in 5 minutes, but let me show you what that means when you go to, where did I have it? Home. Here. So this is my collection of blogs that is driven by that CMS system that I showed you. And when I go to one of them, and I can customize this, how many items I can show. And when I go to one of them, the community already knows that, oh, this is how now I get to that item. And here's the item that it's driven by that other system somewhere there. Okay. And let's go now to Builder. And under Builder, we already covered some of this here, but what I want to cover is at the top, we have the page name. And on the right side, we have page variations. And for this one, we have home and home guest. What that means is I can have this page show two different ways. And based on who's looking at it, I can have different components and I can have different information on it. And we're going to look at that in a second when we look at page settings. But before we go there, if you're the way I designed this, if you're a guest, you're going to see it like this. All right, so it says welcome guest because we don't know who you are. Here are the top articles that I wanted to present to you. And feature topics, we talked about feature topics. Now I know you're a guest and maybe I want you to look something up to make you sign up with my website. If you're already a member, there's no point in showing that to you. And if I go to the bottom, everything looks pretty much the same compared to the other page variation. This is very powerful functionality in communities because now you can customize the experience for based on who's looking at the page. So now if I go in here, my headline is different. It says, oh, you're a Udemy user. I know you. I should have picked a different first name and last name for this particular user here. And here's the leaderboard based on, there's a leaderboard component that shows the users in your org and shows their badges and their points and all that. And here's that dashboard that I do not see when you're a guest. And you have your content footer at the bottom, and you can customize that as well. We're going to come back to this. I want to go to settings for a second. This is important for you to understand a couple of things. So first of all, you need to make it public. So don't confuse making the community being active with making it public. This says now I can have some public pages out there. And then you can go to the pages that you created and make those pages private or public. And the community title is Udemy. This is what you normally see here. And let's go back to settings. And the other extremely useful piece of information that you need to make a mental note or maybe write it down is the guest user profile. Every community in your org is going to have its own guest user profile. If you go to profiles and setup, you will not see that profile there. The only way to get to it is from here. And this is where you start tweaking permissions and all that for the people who are not registered members. And I hope that makes sense to you. We had a question about dashboards. Well, you will have to leverage this particular profile now for those guest users if you need to surface information to them. And in terms of navigational topics, when we talked about content, we kind of looked at navigational topics, but I want to go back to it. And this is going to flip me to the other. Actually, let me do it from here. I want to do it from here. Content management, navigational topics. Here's my navigational topics. Now, if we look at, where's my preview now? Give me 1 second, guys. I have way too many tabs and that's the wrong one. Give me 1 second here because I really want to do a quick preview just to show you what I'm talking about. So if you look at this one here, here's my topics. I have cars, boats, and airplanes. If I go to this here and I add another one, let's call it demo. Add it, save. All right, and then I let me publish it, and You're going to get these messages every time. This is really saving your drafts. Okay, got it. And if it takes too long, Salesforce will send you an email to let you know that it's done. But if we go to preview, now if I go to topics, here's my demo. And this ties back into those topics / tags that are going to surface articles for your folks. So let me go back to view to builder here, and we were looking at this. So we had feature topics, navigational topics, and feature topics. We covered this. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but in terms of customizing it, now the options we have in here are, we started at the beginning, if you recall, we started with a template. Now we have a theme, and this theme can be changed or customized. So if we go to change, I can pick a completely different theme in here. And I can also customize the theme. We're going to get to that later. We can have some of these things in here that you can use. Let me go to builder on data community theme. So if you go in here, you can change theme from here. And we'll just pick this one just for kicks. All right, so now this whole thing has changed to use that theme. And then we can customize it. So if you go to theme, you have some options in here. So colors, image, fonts, and theme settings. Colors basically is all these colors you see in here. What you can do is you can generate a palette from an image. And how this works is, if you have a logo and you want your theme to be aligned with the colors that you have in that logo, you can upload it from here. And then some of these things in here, text, color, et cetera, are going to change based on what Salesforce thinks your theme, your color theme palette should look like. And you can also use branding sets. Again, you can leverage branding sets for your audiences. In one place, it could be blue and red. In other place, it could be green and purple. And you can also do CSS. Again, super technical. We're not going to go in there, but keep in mind, you do have those options to customize the look and feel of your community. And if we go to images, not a lot of stuff in here. This is a background image. Fonts is not a lot of, just get quickly, not a lot of options in here. And theme settings. You need to spend some time in here, show hero, don't show hero, how wide you want it. You might have certain restrictions based on your marketing requirements. I encourage you to explore this, but we're not going to spend a lot of time in here. And let me go back to.
So Dan, there's one question. There's no content will be lost during theme change, right?
No, as far as I know, no. Now, I should have said something when we started looking into this. Some components, based on the template that you're using, some components will not be visible to you. And when we start talking about components in here, that's what I'm talking about. So if you pick the partner component, for example, and you're looking for if you pick the partner template, and you go in here and you don't see a component, it's really because that component, Salesforce thought this might not play nicely with it, so we're not going to show it to you. But there is a way to enable all components, and we're going to get to that when we explore more the settings here. In terms of
also
content,
then will you give the coupon code for your course in Udemy in February? They should contact you directly.
I believe you ask people to fill out a form. But if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I can post it on LinkedIn and you can grab it from there.
So me or the people who want it?
Whatever it's easier for them.
Okay. Okay.
I will.
And also, Dan, just for your benefit and other people too, I've created a community kind of thing, which is not that Salesforce community, so people can ask questions there. Also there, I posted the link on the chat too.
Excellent. Thank you for letting me know. We kind of talked about it.
Yeah,
earlier,
that's right.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, I just started in the morning, so it's not too much content there, but as in when all the useful links that you have, we can post those links over there for benefit of others too.
Yeah. All right. So I hope that answered your question about content. So that is non-destructive, but you might have to go and figure out why am I not seeing certain things, and do I need to put them back on the page? And theme, we covered theme. Language. You can add languages. You can select the default language. Basically, what that means is if I add, for example, French. Let's go with French, and I already have that in here. And I put something in there, maybe a custom component, and Salesforce doesn't know how to translate it to French because I never went through the translation workbench. It'll default to the default language, and you can translate certain things using Google Translate. I never used that, but I believe there's a cost to how much you can translate, or if you use the translation API rather. I'll leave that up to you to do your research. Navigation, you can have multiple navigation menus, and really what we're talking about here is this menu here. Let me just close that. It's this menu here, but you can have other navigation menus that you can use on other pages, or you can have a menu, a navigation menu that you can use in your footer that does not have the same values as this one here. Okay, let's go to, and you can edit this. Let me just see if I can do a quick editing here. You can edit this, and you can add all sorts of menus in here. In this case, if I add, let's just do this one like this, demo 01, and you can pick the type and what it does. And the type could be, it goes to another community page, it could be an event, external URL. So if you had, this can come in really handy if you had an ERP system that you wanted your internal users, for example, to be able to view this menu item and then click on it and go to the ERP system and leverage SSO. You can put that in here. And you might want to send them to a map page or something like that. Whatever that external URL is, you can use that one. You have global actions, menu label to leverage submenus. We talked about navigational topics and Salesforce object. And what I mean by that is if you want to have a page that shows just a Salesforce object, that's what you would be using. And one use case is you have registered users that have opened a case with you. You can have a My Cases page and a menu item that would take them there, and they can see their own pages there. Or you have partners that want to see their own accounts, and that's what you would be using. You'll create a Salesforce object that ties to the account, and you can pick the default value. And that could be list view, detailed view, whatever you have in there. Okay, so I'm going to cancel out of it, and you can move them around to stack them. Let me get out of here. SSO, we covered a bit of SSO when we talked about CSS, so you can use some of that. CMS Connect, we covered a little bit of it when we were talking about, when we're looking at the administration workspace. For analytics and so you can use that. Actually, as CSS, you can use that in here as well. So you can. This is your header editor for your pages. And earlier, when I was talking about not all components being available based on the template that you used, this is where you enable it. So if you enable this, you're going to see all components that Salesforce, your org has available that you can use in here. And if you have performance issues, you enable this one to do progressive rendering. In terms of security, this is really around when you start doing single sign-on or social sign-on, and you have CMS Connect, there's going to be some custom code that happens behind the scenes, and you will have to go to CSP in setup to add those trusted URLs, or maybe enable certain things in your setup to make this error-free. The good news is, if something doesn't click right, Salesforce will tell you, and then it'll give you at least a clue what you need to do. Developers, if you want to export your template, your design, and made it really cool, and somebody else wants to use it, and updates, you will see a little notification in here saying that, hey, there's an update. I recommend you try the updates in a lower environment, not a non-production environment, before you do it in here. Check things out. Odds are that everything's going to work okay, but still be careful. Page structure, really, it's this. It's telling you this is what this page looks like. We have section 1, column, et cetera, et cetera. You can explore this or use it to navigate to various sections easier. But let's go to components. So under components, what you see on this page here, it's all components. Really, everything in here is standard components. And you can add other ones to your page layout. And for this page, we're looking at the home page, the home guest variation. And if you have a Visualforce page in your org, for example, that you want to use in here, you would use a Visualforce component, add it to the page, and then connect that component to the Visualforce page in your org. Remember, you need to tweak the permissions. You need to give whoever's going to be looking at it the right permissions in order to see that Visualforce page. You can also add components from the App Exchange. I hope you're familiar with the App Exchange at this point and you know how that works. But when you click on this one, it's going to take you to App Exchange to add new, to find out components that you can use in here. And if we look at this page, so every time you click on a component, you have this configuration pane on the side that you can change. And let's change this one quickly just to see how real time this is. So now I just made my edit. I tab out. And what happened there? I hope I didn't delete it. Anyway, I take my word for it. It does happen in real time. To delete a component, you actually click on this trash can icon here, and you remove it from your page. And to add a new page, actually, before I move on to adding a new page, any questions about components? No. All right.
Nothing so far, Dan.
Let me just quickly, and I know we're going over, but quickly, these are the page variations. And if you look at the page settings, you can actually page properties. You can access that from here, from this gear, or from here. And let's go here. And now we have some information about the page itself. name, etc. And in terms of variations, now we know we have the home variation and the home guest variation. And if we look at the audience, so in this case, who will see this page? For me, I created a new audience in here, and I assigned that audience to that page. So for me, the audience that I created is called logged in users. And if we go here to audiences, this is my logged in audience, and this is where you create a new audience. So if we go here, let's call this one my new, not that creative with names, just so you guys see it. And you have some options in here based on all of them, some of them, or some custom logic. We'll go with all conditions are met. We can say, you can pick location, but you have to work with a developer and an administrator to make that work. You can use profiles or certain permissions, or based on record, or based on user. In our case, we're just going to go with profile, and we'll say if profile equals customer community plus. When you save it, then you can use this audience to assign it to a page. So I'm going to save it just to show you guys how it works. And you can add other profiles in here. So don't add a condition, for example, that says if profile equals customer community plus, or if profile equals customer community, or if profile equals whatever profile you want to pick. You don't need to do that. You can pick another one in here. You can pick this one. Right, so now they're all in here. So you can use this one to be your and or condition kind of thing. So let's save this one. And once I save it, click done. Now I can go in here and edit assignments. And here it is. Right now, this one is the one assigned. I can pick this one and assign this one from here. So what that means is whenever these folks that I picked here, the community plus user and customer community user log in, they will be under this audience. And my page, I'm just gonna cancel out of here. And this page variation is gonna be tailored to those users. And you can go as far as customizing the components as well. Trying to find something. Home guest. I'm trying to find something that will. Anyway, you guys get the idea, right? Like if I have a non-registered user, for example, and I want to surface this component, that user, and I use the guest profile, I can have them run a flow to register a new product, even though they might not be a user. Okay, and let's cover quickly the pages. And to add a new page, you just click up here.
So Dan, the time is going to time out at 2 hours 30 minutes. So because in the Zoom I had set that limit.
Okay, so just quickly, this is how you you add a new page, and that could be a standard page, meaning you're looking at what you have internally on your community, or you can bring up a page that ties into an object in Salesforce. And I will stop now.
Right,
sorry for going over, folks.
I'm sure like this is all going to be the hands-on, or they can go through your Udemy course and at least personally, I learned it from from actually getting hands-on and following your Udemy course to step-by-step implement myself, the community. So I think everybody can enjoy that course by, and Dan has, was going to give us the coupon code. We can either, ping him up, text him for the coupon code, or me. So Dan, will you give me the code, or how will it happen?
I will definitely send it to you as well. Yeah, it's
Okay.
just that Udemy has certain limitations in regards to how often you can generate codes. And keep in mind, though, that those codes are only available for 3 days from the moment I issue them. And even if you're not ready to take the course, as soon as you get the code, just go in and enroll it. It's free anyway, and we can access the course anytime after that.
Okay. So yeah, so everybody can either contact Dan or me to get those course codes. And yeah, it would be great if you do it on the platform yourself and follow along Dan's excellent course on Udemy. I personally cleared my Community Cloud through his course. I basically got to know all the features of Community Cloud through the course, and that really helped me understand the full concept. But of course, this is all hands-on. One has to do it ourselves to really get it right. Mm-hmm. So I think we had an excellent session, Dan. It was so enlightening, and hope it was helpful for all. And yeah, so catch you again on the trails next time.
Thank you for organizing it. And like I said, feel free to connect with me. And if you have any questions, I see somebody has 2 questions here on the call. Yamu.
Do you want to open mic, everyone, and you can ask questions right now?
Hi, this is Yamuna. So I have a question regarding the page, using the page, creating the page, and then object pages. So in the object page, there is an URL, right? So in that URL, we have to set up the developer name of the object and then filter name of the object. So I'm not sure about that one. So the object name I'm sure, but filter name, where to pick that filter name? Is it a list view filter, or where I should go and find that filter name? That's the one question. The second one is, okay. Yeah, you can.
Sorry, so you're trying to create an object page, and then you have.
Yes. Yeah, I'm creating object page, and then I want that URL to have it in the flow, so that I want to redirect my flow to that page, object page. So for that one, I'm able to get the object name, object API name for that object, but I'm not able to figure out filter name. Like if you see the URL in the page settings, it will say the URL path and then colon object API name and colon filter name. So that one I'm asking about.
The filter name, filter name. I need to look into that. I kind of think I know what you're looking for, but
I think this one is
something about filters. What?
Okay.
You know what? Can we park this, because I think I understand what it is, but I don't think I have a clear answer that is gonna make any sense.
Yeah, I think now what we can do is, if anybody has more detailed questions, you can text Dan, or message him on LinkedIn, and then he can get back to you on those particular questions.
Okay.
But I think a lot of clarity comes through the Udemy course I took. So I think, yeah. And that would be the next route to get more clarity, right? So right now, let's just wrap this off, and because we are over time now. I think it's been quite exhausting session. So Dan it's so hard to give on the demo on the platform, but he did it a very smooth way. So we really appreciate that. So.
Sorry, Shiva, I think there's one last question. Somebody's asking if we can use a profile, if we can build a profile community. Of course you can. The problem is I don't think Salesforce encourages people to use a dev org for production. If you do that, you technically use it for production. I don't think they're gonna mind, but just wanted to point that out. Don't take my word for it.
Right. Okay, so do you want to say bye? Everybody want to turn on the cameras and do one gesture or something?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Thanks so much.
You want to turn on your camera for a short bit?
Thank you very much for everything today. Very informative.
My pleasure. Hope
Thank
to help
you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll just take a quick photograph. Do you want to do, say, victory sign? Right, I got it. So we're good to go. Right. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank
Catch
you.
next time. Have a great day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.